Welcome viewers, and thank you for tuning in to Nat Chat and today's edition of Migration Stories. And my guest today is Mekonnen Kebede. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thanks,
and I'm so delighted to have a story from Ethiopia.
Thank you.
From an Ethiopian person who migrated here. Now, I know that was 1986 or so.
1985, 86, I arrived in Australia. Yes.
And that's quite a while ago, but
is.
we're going to find it very interesting to hear your story.
Sure.
30 years in Australia. So upon arrival, what was in place to assist you as an arrival from Ethiopia at that time?
I didn't actually come directly from Ethiopia.
Right.
I had to leave Ethiopia, running away from the communist regime of Ethiopia, Mengistu Haile Mariam, and I had to go to Zimbabwe because of the atrocities that was committed in Ethiopia and that was happening at the time.
Yes.
So I came to Australia actually from Zimbabwe. Yes. I lived in Zimbabwe for about 3 years and did work as a teacher for O-level students whose exams used to come from Cambridge University at the end of the year.
Wow.
And I came to Australia. My story is not your typical migrant story. I actually came to Australia as a married person to an Australian. And my ex-wife used to teach with me at the same school. She was teaching English and I was teaching
Zimbabwe.
Yes, teaching biology. She was sent by the Australian government as an expatriate teacher to help the government of Zimbabwe. That was soon after independence. I arrived in Zimbabwe 2 years after independence, and countries like Britain, Canada, Ireland, Australia sent teachers and doctors to Zimbabwe to help them during the transition period from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe.
I see.
Yeah, because most of the trained manpower and migrated out of Zimbabwe, the white population. These countries contributed to keep the economy of Zimbabwe going.
Really?
Yes, yes. So,
and their independence was around that time?
Yes. Now, Zimbabwe became independent 1980. I think.
But just by the way, did you move, well, you escaped Ethiopia?
Yes.
And that was across the border to Zimbabwe?
No. Zimbabwe is 5 hours flight from Ethiopia,
Okay,
Africa being such a huge continent.
It's huge, yes.
I had to fly out of Zimbabwe, out of Ethiopia.
Yep.
I had to apply for a passport through the communist regime, and I had to promised to stay out of Ethiopia only for 3 months and had to give a guarantor who can guarantee me for $25,000 if I remain out of Ethiopia, if I don't return in time. Yes.
Wow.
So, who was my brother-in-law. So I left for Zimbabwe and I didn't return. Yes.
But of course a whole new life started there and you met your future wife. And
certainly.
But I mean, was it dangerous to, be in Ethiopia at that time? Was it sort of physically dangerous for people there, or?
It was very dangerous.
Yeah.
The communist
What kinds
regime,
of things were happening there at that time, in
well,
the early 80s?
The government is a dictator. It's a military junta who overthrew a royal dynasty that ruled the country for more than 3,000 years.
I see.
And came to power by force.
Okay.
They were not democratically elected. So once they are in power, they were jailing and killing people without trial, and there was no justice. And the government of Mengistu Haile Mariam actually quarreled with the intelligentsia of Ethiopia and with the students, and I think tens of thousands of students were killed while walking in the streets.
My goodness.
In the name of being against the revolution. They are called labeled as counter-revolutionaries. And I some of my friends were killed. I was a school student. I was a grade 9 student at the time. And that continued until I went through university for about 5, 6, 7 years. Oh. And I was actually advised by my parents to leave the country if I want to survive. Oh, because goodness. Most of my friends around me were being killed. So I left for Zimbabwe. I got an invitation from a cousin who was living in Harare.
Yes.
And I went there as a tourist. Then I applied to Minister of Education, and I did serve the Minister of Education of Zimbabwe as a teacher for 2 years, after which I got married to an Australian and came to Australia.
Wow. Yeah. So in Zimbabwe, kind of a happy time? A much happier time for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Zimbabwe was not declining economically like now.
Yes.
It was soon after independence.
And they were rebuilding the education system because everyone had many people had left, I see.
Yes,
okay.
And it wasn't, the infrastructures were still there in existence.
Wow.
They didn't deteriorate as you see them now. And I had really one of my best time in Zimbabwe. Which was very short, really, 3 years. I was just wandering around and visiting the different parts of Zimbabwe for 1 year. Then after I got employed by the Minister of Education as a teacher, and I was teaching for 2 years, after which I left for Australia.
Well, Zimbabwe and the lifestyle there.
Yes.
Were there many Ethiopian people there with you?
No. One thing I would like to mention is it was actually very rare to see Ethiopians out of Ethiopia before the communist regime.
So,
including Zimbabwe.
We'll come back to that
after
our break. So stick around. We'll hear more about this wonderful story. Welcome back. We're with Mekonnen, and you're telling us your story about moving from Ethiopia to Zimbabwe and then on to Australia. But there's a love story there too.
Yes.
And you met your Australian wife there in Zimbabwe.
Yes. Would you like to
tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
Yes, please.
My idea and plan was to go to either Britain, to the United States of America.
Okay.
I didn't have Australia in mind. However, I met this Australian expatriate teacher and I fell in love.
Yep.
And we got married in Zimbabwe. She came back to her job here. She is a teacher as well here.
Yes.
And then I followed her. I arrived in Melbourne. I came to visit Zimbabwe in 1985, to visit Australia, Melbourne,
yes.
And went back in 1985. Then I resigned from my teaching position and came here at the beginning of 1986. Yes. Yeah.
Fabulous. So this is where we now have a wonderful story of those 2 or 3 decades.
Sure.
In Australia, with your background.
Yes.
And your history.
Yes.
What was it like being in a country where you don't have to fear and where there's full of opportunity? That was a good feeling.
It was an excellent feeling because people really don't know what the meaning of freedom is. Most people. It's a great thing to walk in the streets and not to be shot at. And to sit at home and to expect a bullet coming through the window. So it was coming here gave me really full freedom.
Yes.
And
perhaps a liberation of spirit.
Certainly, and recover from the worries and the troubles I had.
I thought you were going to say traumas.
The traumas, yes, of course. Yeah, it's very traumatic, especially seeing the body of your friends just in front of you, thrown in the street like dogs.
I'm so sorry that you saw that.
So that's really
How long does
good
it take?
thing.
You never really overcome such trauma. But, you know, it did help a lot being here over time, and the trauma, you know, the concerns and everything subsided a bit,
Sure.
and a new life was able to emerge, hey?
Certainly.
So how did you go about your initial sort of settlement? You had a wife here, you moved in with her?
I came into
housing?
a well-organized home.
Oh, wonderful.
And during the first year, because Ethiopia is not a member of Commonwealth, even if I was, Ethiopia is one country in Africa that has never seen colony.
Yes.
So it's not a member of Commonwealth because of that. And my education from the University of Addis Ababa was not really recognized here.
Like my father. Okay.
Yes. So when my wife went back to her profession, I had to work as a lab technician and audiovisual assistant for a private school in Berwick, which is under the Anglican Church, for about a year. And after which, I went back to Monash to upgrade my skills.
Yes.
And joined the university. I did a microbiology course, and I did a microbiology Bachelor of Science honors. And soon after I graduated, actually a month or so before I graduated, I was employed by an international organization as a medical scientist. Yes. And
so wonderful education and a whole new area, building on your knowledge before.
Yes.
So, you know, what are the qualifications that you have now?
Free education then, that gave me the chance to go back to uni and to do my education. I did my Bachelor of Science honors free. HEX was introduced when I was in my 4th year, but I was given scholarship, so that was free.
Yes.
Then while I was working as a scientist, I went ahead and did a Master of Science. So I had a Bachelor of Science honors, and a Master of Science. And I had another degree from Addis Ababa University, which is Bachelor of Science in Biology.
Okay.
And those are 4.
Yes.
However, after 23 years of living well and working, which I'm very grateful for, because I was given a great chance, and I was actually promoted to a level of senior scientist.
Excellent.
Supervising 16 scientists and 3 technicians, and working hard to the health system of Australia, really, contributing immensely to society, both in community associations, as a board member for Cat Protection Society of Victoria. And,
which society?
Cat Protection Society, and later on for the primary health care, ISIS Primary Health, which
community
I still am
groups or non-government organisation groups.
It's a government organisation, really. It's funded by the Department of Human Services.
So you're the board members there?
Yes, and it gets...
Thank you for contributing all that here.
Thank you.
Excellent.
It's given around $30 to $40 million a year.
Oh, really?
As a budget, yeah.
And the area field of their,
It's governance.
Yeah, governance
as
issues.
A board director.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
That's it. So I have been doing that, and I'm also one of the founding members of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the first one in Australia.
Okay.
And later on, I lost my job due to the global financial crisis and restructuring. Then I went back to Monash to do another degree, which is the Master of Education, which I have graduated in around 2 weeks ago. So,
well, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm looking for a teaching job now. Yep. And what I'm trying to tell you here is how much opportunity I was given by being in Australia.
It's an excellent answer to
and
this one question.
And what a fair country it was to
really,
me. Yes.
Overall.
Yes.
That's great to hear. But we'll come back and find out a little bit more.
Thank you.
And I'm fascinated to know a bit more about your time in Australia. So do stick around, and after these announcements, we'll be back. Welcome back. We're with Mekonnen from Ethiopia, but now from Australia, from Melbourne,
Yes.
because you've been here 30 years, and you were just talking
31.
before that about now you're ready to teach a bit of all of your skills.
Sure.
So, what's your view of the youth in Melbourne and their general kind of, interest in the sciences and learning, and, what would you like to teach?
I actually specialized in primary teaching because
wonderful.
what I would like to do is give a very good base to those who are growing up. I think the government is now introducing more and more science to the primary schools.
Yes.
So I do believe I would be very important
You'd be
there.
a great science teacher, a general teacher,
Yes,
but with an
yes.
interest in science.
Yeah,
How wonderful.
Yes,
That'd be
yes.
great, man.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll get a gig soon.
I hope so.
But all these other skills as well.
Yes.
But what about life for Ethiopian people in Melbourne? Are you aware of a subculture? Are most of the people, from, well, I know it's 30 years now,
Yeah.
but you're still connected to Ethiopian community?
Yes, I am.
Do they live in a certain geographic area or not?
Yeah, most of them, I think it's because I got married to an Australian. I came directly to areas, the southeastern areas.
Yes.
And since then I have always been living in the southeast. But most of them seem to be settling in the western regions, like
Yes.
Deer Park, Caroline Springs, Footscray, Sunshine, Point Cook, all these areas.
Yeah.
And the Ethiopians are very social people. They always look out for each other. We actually in Ethiopia always have lived with harmony, the Muslim, the Christian, and whether you are Islam or Christian, we always look after each other, and we go and visit each other, and we try and maintain some parts of our identity and culture as well.
Of course.
By celebrating the New Year, by celebrating Christmas, Easter, and some of the Muslim holidays as well.
All right. And I know that there's a bit of celebration of Ethiopian coffee
Yes.
ceremonies.
Yes.
I forget who does it, but I've been out to Footscray.
Yes.
And, it's very sociable sort of a lifestyle. That
coffee
obviously-
is embedded in the social culture of Ethiopia as tea is to the Chinese or
Yes.
to the British.
Or the Mediterranean, we love coffee too.
Yes, and
But Ethiopian coffee, particularly good.
Ethiopia is the origin of coffee. That's
But
what
there's
we
rituals
know.
around it too.
Yes,
isn't there?
there is ritual like the Japanese tea ceremony.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and coffee has to be served, and we burn incense. The frankincense is burnt while coffee is being served.
Oh, really?
And a little bit of a piece of bread or some food is served.
What is the
with
main
that as
type
well.
of coffee? Is it a percolator one or is it
No. Coffee is actually, even in my house now, coffee is roasted in the house.
Wow.
And it's ground in the house, and it's actually made in the house.
Yep.
We use an Ethiopian clay pot.
Oh, wow.
Ethiopian made clay pot at home, and you cannot believe the taste is so different from the cafe
Where
lattes
can I
and
get that?
flat whites you eat. You drink in restaurants.
I'll ask for it.
I think you can only get it from Ethiopians.
I better find some more Ethiopian people, but I do enjoy going to the western suburbs. Is there a main festival event or an annual event that Ethiopian people come together?
Certainly.
When's that?
When it comes to the general Ethiopian population, which includes the Muslim and the Christian and all
Living in
others,
harmony
the
together, yes.
agnostic, the New Year is our main holiday,
I see.
and the Ethiopian Community Association in Victoria invites dignitaries from the government organization and gathers the people, and that happens in the West as well in function rooms.
And that organisation, Ethiopian Association, that's
Yes.
based over there in the
Yes,
West.
it's based.
Okay.
It doesn't have a permanent open office, but it's based there.
All right.
And when we founded it in 1985 and incorporated
being you were one of the
myself
founders?
and 45 of us, all in all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
It was actually, we did get great help from the Footscray City Council,
I see.
meeting rooms, and some assistance was provided by them.
Well, I was interested there to find out what assistance there was. So it's great to hear that councils do this important work.
They do.
But here in Australia, sometimes there's elements that say, why are councils doing this sort of thing? And I find it remarkable, like whenever people criticise why councils are getting involved with, setting up organisations and things, but that's exactly what they should be doing for their local communities.
Sure, but I would like to,
Yes.
it's really a great thing that they are doing that, and why not,
Why not?
really?
Yes.
Why shouldn't they? But I would like to point out that while all this is gained and we are happy, there also is a social problem among the community. Many youngsters are actually going out of line and becoming actually, especially mental illness, and which destabilization cause is a huge problem.
So that's one of the main focuses on the Ethiopian Association.
It's not really very functional. It hasn't grown as well as we expected it to.
It's a current problem, of course.
It is a current problem, and I wish if something could be done about it, but I don't know what we can do, really.
Well, maybe it's an area that we need to think a bit more about.
Yes.
And certainly if there's people with ideas there, just email me with the email when you see the credits. But there's much work left to do.
Yes.
But what parts of Ethiopian culture could help those youths who are going off Australia?
I suppose it's loss of sense of belonging, loss of sense of identity. These are the things. So what really would help would be not trying to spread and expand the Ethiopian culture, but trying to integrate the new arrivals.
Make it at home here.
Yes.
Give it a home here.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Mekonnen.
You're welcome.
I so appreciate you being here, giving us this time.
Thank you for giving me the time and listening to my voice.
Well, it's great to have a program like this. It's great to have a guest. It's great to have Channel 31, and it's great to have Northern Access TV producing today's program of Migration Stories. I'm Rich Micallef, and I hope you can tune in again next week.